Every place where we come through, there was lots of trucks. Weyburn, there must have been 250 trucks waiting. In every town that we come in, there was more joining every time. I think everybody's sick of the government that's ruining us. Other than that, everybody's just here to try get rid of this carbon tax. Why doesn't the federal government do like our provincial government? I got 20% back on my solar system. Why doesn't the federal government also give us an incentive to put this in? Instead of giving money to other countries to stop carbon, why doesn't he give everybody in Canada a chance to do like I'm doing?
We have a lot of members that are going to be negatively impacted by a carbon tax in the province of Saskatchewan. A lot of our guys rely on fossil fuels, unfortunately, to build Saskatchewan's highways and transportation networks. So there's a lot at stake here in terms of jobs and competitive advantage or disadvantage in this case for our members. We're looking at well over $1 million in additional expenses for the industry that's unfortunately going to be, offloaded onto the taxpayers because the major procurer of our service is government, whether it's provincial, federal, or municipal. So ultimately, the taxpayers are going to be, facing a heavier burden because of this.
But we're going to make polluters pay and put money in your pockets.
There is an imperative to put a price on pollution, and if there are costs associated with for average families, we will more than compensate those families for those costs.
Well, how are they going to do that? They talk about this rebate as if you're going to get the money back, and then you're going to get a premium, so you're going to get even more money back. How do they calculate that, though? That was a part that was lost from the conversation.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing ground.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. I'm going to play for you a short clip. This clip is from a BBC TV series called Coast. Why am I playing this? It's because I want you to hear the words of an expert. They are talking about an archaeological find. They're doing studies on the coast of the UK. Exactly where, I can't tell you. That does not matter. What matters are the words. The words that are used categorically confirm what I have been saying and many, many others have been saying. Listen to these words, play them backwards and forwards a few times, and then I'm going to talk to you about the subject of climate change. All the while, keep this clip in mind and ask yourself this question: can I afford for these people to be wrong? That's the only question you need to ask yourself. Is this the biggest hoax in human history? The biggest? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. Can you afford to make that? Can you afford to take the risk that these idiots are wrong?
The fragments of charcoal and plant material are all that remain of the world our ancestors inhabited. But they contain vital clues about why these people might have been here.
One aspect that's clear is that it didn't look exactly like it does today. There may well have been sandhills several kilometres west, in other words, out that way under the sea.
Right.
But in between here and those low sand ridges would have been a complex landscape made up of lagoons, tidal creeks, there would have been salt marshes, and there would have been some scrubland a little way east from where we're sitting now. Between 5,000 and 7,000 years ago, we're looking at an average July temperature a degree or two warmer than today. Climates that would have been rather like the middle of France, which might be one of the reasons why the animals came here and the people came here.
You know, there are times when many of us are frustrated beyond imagination. I'm sure you feel like that sometimes. I know I'm not alone. I want to have a little chat, calm and collected. No pressure, just you, me, and I hope many of your closest and not so closest friends. I want to talk about the hysteria surrounding this thing called climate change, which used to be called global warming, which used to be called global cooling. well, whatever it's called. I was recently in the UK, and I have to tell you, if you think this climate change hysteria is bad in Canada, and no doubt it's also building in the US, it's nothing, absolutely nothing, compared with the UK. It is non-stop, wall to wall, on every form of media you can imagine, and some you can't. It's even bleeding into local weather stories on local channels. It's in every form of entertainment you can imagine. To be very honest with you, Joseph Goebbels would be very proud of what this movement has achieved. Well, as far as Europe and the UK is concerned, the next target has to be North America. This is the prize. They have to control you in Canada and, of course, the ultimate prize, the USA. Be in no doubt, they thought they had that sewn up in 2016. Unlike the USA, Canada and Canadians are clearly slipping into the trance that Western Europe is under. The latest being the introduction of a tax in Canada on carbon dioxide. And if you didn't know that, the carbon dioxide is the gas that you exhale as human beings. So in actual fact, that is a tax on human beings. A tax on human beings breathing. Think where that ultimately takes you. No, I will come on to that a little later. Maybe. What I want to do is to highlight a letter that has been produced. The contents really don't matter. It's the sentiment behind the letter that's, in my mind, far more important. You can find references all over the internet to this letter. This one just happens to come from a Canadian media source, and it's the Globe and Mail, and I will put links on my site. It's entitled Article Thousands of Scientists Sign Up Open Letter Declaring Earth is Facing a fill in the dots. This is dated November 5. In it states that thousands of so-called climate scientists have signed a letter demanding action on so-called climate emergency. In it, they state such things as, and I quote, "We declare ... clearly and unequivocally that the planet Earth is facing a climate emergency." That's the letter's opening statement. It's another example of growing willingness by scientists to leave their labs in an attempt to persuade the public to take seriously what research is telling them. This is all part of the article. Academic researchers have been more involved in visible activism, going to rallies, protesting peacefully, said Loni Arson, a signator and long-time biologist at Queen's University, Kingston. That's in Ontario, Canada, if you didn't know. That's definitely ramped up, especially in the last year. Scientists at the beginning of their careers feel the same, said Alina Fisher, a signature and University of Victoria PhD student. Quote, "People do understand, in brackets, climate change, close brackets, but they don't see how it affects them. It's important for us as scientists to breach that gap," unquote. The letter is frank about the consequences. The climate crisis is closely linked to excessive consumption of the wealthy lifestyle, unquote. It says, quote, "We must change how we live," unquote. Energy sources must move beyond carbon. Diets must include less meat. And the article continues in that vein, but I think you get the gist. Basically, human beings cannot live the way they live anymore. For some reason, something has happened in the last 50 to 60 years that has changed the world. This is their view, and woe betide if you have an alternate view to that. So I want to put this simple question, a question that these people all refuse to answer, but I will. I will spell this out in simple terms, and I will tell you where to get all the information about where this doctrine comes from, because that's what it is. It's doctrine, where they get their doctrine from. This, ladies and gentlemen, is nothing more and nothing less than propaganda spewed out by the UN. It's hard to believe, isn't it, that one organisation can have so much power. All the information about what these scientists want to do to you, and make no mistake about this, they intend to do that, is all in one document. It's in the United Nations Agenda 2030 document. I have said on numerous occasions this simple message. If you like, it is a simple message. It's a simple message, it's an effective message, and it's a profound message. Control the media, control the message. Think about that for a minute. If you can control the means of information, then you can control the message that information is being conveyed. So if I tell you the sky is red, and every day all you hear is the sky is red, you will eventually believe the sky is red. In Europe, these activists have been wildly successful in their endeavours. They have burrowed their way into the educational system and the curriculum, to the extent that, for example, Italy is the first European country to have introduced a mandatory climate subject to be taught at a very early grade, where indoctrination is easiest and most effective. Be under no illusion. We are creating for ourselves the next generation of self-indoctrinated climate activists. So I ask you, I know this sounds dramatic, but it is the nub of the question. Once you have read and listened to and done your own homework on Agenda 2030, go out into your own community with open eyes, and you will see the evidence at the local level. This is Agenda 2030 being implemented quietly, relentlessly, and without your consent. So ask yourself these questions. Do you want to live where you choose to live? Do you think you should be able to live how you live? Do you think you should have the right to have your own mode of transport? Do you think you should be able to choose what you and your family eat? Do you think you should be able to choose what you wear? Do you think you should be able to travel where and when you want? Do you think you should have the final say in your country? And finally, while Americans believe their laws are sacrosanct, do you think you have the right to do and say what you wish to say? Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you do, then you must act. Do not make the mistake of thinking these climate activists are a joke. They are very real, because they are acting right now, even in the bastion of freedom, the United States of America. Canada has already been taken over by left-wing climate activists in every major party. The same applies in Europe, and be under no illusion. They are there in spades in the federal US Congress of the United States, and at state level and at local level, as well as in all parties. How does it start? It starts in the education system and spreads. We must fight. We must all fight, and we must help even those in another country. If we believe in freedom and the right to self-determination, we have a duty to fight for our fellow man. This is not a joke. This is real. Read Agenda 2030. I have links on my site, and I'll be putting more up. Do your own homework. And finally, I'm going to play a short clip from a British playwright, of all people, back in the 1930s, by the name of George Bernard Shaw. It's a difficult clip to hear. You may have to play it several times to hear all the words. But in it, you will hear some words that I hope you will find frightening. If you do, and I hope you do, then consider where climate change, Agenda 2030, whatever you want to call it, whatever the catchy phrase is, will take us. Who decides what's correct and what's not? In the end, that can only end up with one question: who lives and who does not?
You must all know half a dozen people at least who are no use in this world, who are more trouble than they are worth. Just put him there and say, sir or madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence? If you can't justify your existence, if you're not pulling your weight in the social vote, if you're not producing as much as you consume, or perhaps a little more, then clearly we cannot use the big organization of our society for the purpose of keeping you alive, because your life does not benefit us and it can't be of very much use to yourself.
Bernard believed in mass killing by category, not usually by racial category, but by category, the idle, the unfit.
Killing off the parasites within society was what Marxian socialism was about.
It demanded in a London newspaper that the scientists should devise a humane gas.
I appeal to the chemists to discover a humane gas that will kill instantly and painlessly. Deadly by all means, but humane, not cruel.
You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Spotify, and email. We're on Spotify under the podcast section. Type in Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/A-Radio, EHRADIO, A-Radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 11:45 Eastern, and tell your friends and pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the mainstream media want you to know.